Hello, everyone. My name is Dave Eberly, and I'm the Church and Community Relations Manager here at Lutheran Family and Children's Services of Missouri. And we're going to continue our series that we're doing here in April to talk about childhood abuse and neglect. April is Child Abuse and Neglect Awareness Month, and we want to take some time to share some solutions, some answers, and maybe give some more information about why this is such an impact in our community and our state today. We've reached into some of our resources here at LFCS to try to get some well-qualified professionals to share their perspective and their opinions. And today we are kind enough to be joined by Anthony Bedford. Anthony, thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate it, sir.
Thank you, David, for having me.
So, Anthony, why don't we start off? Tell me a little bit about yourself and some of the work that you're doing here at LFCS.
So, of course, as you all may know, my name is Anthony Bedford, and I work as a family case manager in the LFCS foster care program. I have worked at LFCS for about 2 years and 10 months now. And as a family case manager, I essentially work to reunify the children with their parents once they have been removed from the home due to abuse and/or neglect.
So, as you're starting and you're working with these kids, what are typically some of the goals you are working towards for whatever sign of success may be for these kids?
So I would say, David, my first goal is to ensure that they are safe and in a placement where they can have their needs met and thrive into permanency. The permanency plan has been met. And that can consist of doing my due diligence to find fit and willing appropriate family members to place them with. And if relatives cannot be located, we place them in a least restrictive foster home.
Do you have any strategies or ways that you personally go about trying to make that happen, or things that you think are good touches when working with these kids to try to achieve those goals?
So I would just really say that, consistency is the key, in making phone calls to family members, reaching out to anybody that, certain family members may know that would be willing to open their homes, to these kids. It could be aunts and uncles, maybe even extended family members that may not have had too much contact with the kids, but that are familiar and that have been around them somewhat. So ensuring that they, essentially are able to be kept with family. And second, if we cannot, by, any means necessary, but if we cannot keep them with family, then the next, step would be to place them in a least restrictive placement, which is finding a traditional foster home that would best fit this child's needs.
Do you have any misconceptions you'd like to clear up, or anything that you wish the general public should know about foster care that maybe they don't?
Yes, thank you for asking. That's a really good question, David. I wish the general public would know that our goal is to always ensure the safety of our children that come into state custody, and to help our parents get to a healthier place physically, mentally, as well as emotionally, in order to have a successful reunification with their child. In terms of the misconceptions, a few misconceptions can be that child abuse and neglect only happens in impoverished communities, or that it can only happen in certain ethnic communities. It should be known that child abuse and neglect occurs in many different communities, no matter the race, the culture, or socioeconomic background. It's prevalent across the U.S.
So, as it is unfortunately that prevalent, what are some of the common ways that you have seen that your clients and kids that you've encountered in the foster care system have experienced abuse and neglect? What does that look like to the average person?
Mm-hmm. So many children can experience abuse through being verbally, mentally, and emotionally abused by a parent. Children can also experience other forms of abuse, such as being physically and sexually abused. And then when you cross over into the area of neglect, some children can experience neglect through not being fed, bathed properly, or even having their hygiene needs met. They can even experience medical neglect, such as not being taken to the doctor regularly, or given their prescribed medications that their pediatricians have prescribed to treat certain medical illnesses that they have.
So that's a wide range of stuff there that you guys are dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
I mean, how common is that within an average community?
I would say that it is common across many different communities. And unfortunately, many of the kids that I come into contact with, and that I work with, they deal with a lot. And it's not just being physically abused or sexually abused. Sometimes dealing with one child, they can deal with multiple levels of abuse and or neglect.
What would be some common sense but really impactful ways that the average person watching this could affect and could help prevent child abuse and neglect in their community?
Well, David, I would say, first off, distributing brochures or pamphlets pertaining to stopping child abuse and neglect in the local communities. People can, contact their state and local officials through calling and writing letters, pushing for new and additional child welfare laws to further protect our children from abuse and or neglect. And then contacting the media on many different levels, the newspapers, television, the radio station. I know that many people are very familiar with what we have in front of us today with our electronic devices, going to the media as far as Facebook. Those can also be measures that can be taken to be able to get that awareness out, to be able to stop,
So that's a big push for advocacy.
Mm-hmm.
What I can see is that's another thing. What about if we encounter or witness something that we're not sure of, and maybe we're at a point to where we're just uncertain, and we see something that is just strange or odd? What would you recommend is the best way that we would handle that as maybe someone who's not a mandated reporter, or who isn't sure if this is a good thing or if this is something wrong?
So I would say, first off, if you are in a public area, that could be a store, a fast food restaurant, or out in the community somewhere, and you are unsure, I would definitely say, if you're witnessing something that you feel is detrimental to a child, to go ahead and call 911, local law enforcement, to have them come out and assist you, and being able to, further assist in helping with that situation. Also, picking up the phone to call the child abuse and neglect hotline number. Once you make those reports, they would then, be able to determine whether or not it meets that level, and kind of really get that pertinent information as far as, the description of the child, the description of that caretaker, as well as, the description of a car. All of those facts are really good to helping that hotline worker be able to, assist in that situation.
And something I wanted to have you, I guess, confirm to make sure, because I've heard this and I want to make sure it's the case, that if someone were to call that, Missouri Abuse and Neglect hotline, that it's not automatically the state's going to come in and they're going to take the kids out, or they're going to do these sort of things, that it's just going to kind of start the process in motion. And obviously it'll be remain anonymous for whoever makes the call, but it's not a guaranteed conviction that they did something wrong. It's just starting the thing in motion. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. Because I know I've had some people talk about the hesitancy to not want to do that because they feel like, well, what if I'm wrong? Or what if what I'm seeing isn't the full story? And so now they're like, I don't know if I want to do that. So do you have any recommendations to how someone would judge kind of those ends as to whether they should make a call versus not?
Only thing that I can say is, when in doubt, call that hotline number, and, they'll help you definitely figure it out. In terms of, that doubt, if you feel like a child is being abused, or you have that question, in fact, in doubt, I would just go ahead and make that call. And like I said, let the ones who, are trained to kind of know how to deal with these things, further their investigation or their assessment on the situation.
And now this is obviously, as we're talking with these sort of things, a lot of negative thoughts come to our head. Obviously, we think of the worst situations. We think of the kids that are impacted by it. But you deal with that on a daily basis, but you also get the hindsight of seeing the successes. With respect to client confidentiality, do you have any client success stories of either a single client or a sibling group that you've worked with that you'd be willing to share to talk about what the foster care system is really about and what it's meant to do?
So there is one in particular story, David, that I will never forget. When I first started working for LFCS, I received a sibling group of four little girls on my caseload, and they had been in the system for quite some time. And of course, they were on many other of my coworkers' caseloads prior to me coming, and of course, it was transferred to me. And so they were initially, when they came into care, they were split up because it was considered to be a large sibling group. So of course, we didn't have placement for all four girls to be placed together at that point in time. And so they were split up, unfortunately, into, I want to say, about 2 or 3 different placements for a while. And so we continued our due diligence, our efforts to be able to work with the parents. Unfortunately, the mother, she hadn't done what she needed to do. And of course the fathers, as well, such as not being able to do what they needed to do. So we got to a point where it was termination, of parental rights, and we had to then get them a permanent placement. And so essentially, a placement provider who had one set of the girls went on and decided to go ahead and take off all four. And of course, that was a journey within itself. But she was willing and ready to be able to give them, their forever home. And I will never forget the day that we finally got through our final, stage in the process of that adoption, and to see their smiling faces, and to see how happy and comfortable they were in their placement. That is something that I will never forget, David.
It's just incredible. And I don't think that that's something that people realize, that the goal isn't to just rip families apart. It's the exact opposite. It's to make sure that everyone is safe and that they're together as much as humanly possible, and I thank you for sharing that, because again, that's an example of, that's what the foster care system is meant to do. It's meant to keep the family as a unit. So any closing thoughts or any statements that you would like to share here to kind of wrap up what we've talked about so far?
So there are 3 things that I leave with people when we're talking about the subject of child abuse and neglect. And considering the fact that it is child abuse and neglect, the awareness month, I just want to leave with you 3 things that I say to people, and that is, remember to focus on the importance of how many lives can be changed through bringing awareness to child abuse and neglect. Remember to fight the good fight of faith. There are, going to be challenges and doors that will be shut in the process of bringing awareness and advocacy to child abuse and neglect, but don't give up. Just keep the faith. And then lastly, finish. Always remember to finish what you started, because there are always children counting on us to advocate and to fight for them throughout the journey. So those are my 3 keys that I leave with people in the process of continuing that fight and that effort to bring awareness to child abuse and neglect.
Couldn't think of a better way to wrap it up. Thank you very much, Anthony. I appreciate your time and I appreciate your insight, sir.
Thank you, David.
So for you watching at home, I thank you for sticking along. Hopefully you got some information and a little bit of clarity as to what, child abuse and neglect is, what you can do, and what the foster care program is meant to do. You've seen it here before if you've watched the video, but we'll have it here again at the end. The Missouri Child Abuse and Neglect Hotline number will be right here. So please write it down, keep it in your phone, and keep it there just in case you see something. If something comes up that's abnormal or you're concerned by it, you can always make the call. They will just investigate. It won't be an end of all. You're not condemning somebody. You're just trying to see, this is abnormal. I'd like to explore it further. Beyond that, if you would like to explore fostering at any standpoint, if you feel that respite short-term foster care might be something that would be beneficial for you, something that you think you have in your heart as a passion, please contact us here at 866-326-LFCS. We are always in need of short-term respite foster care parents, and we'd love to have you give us a call and just learn a little bit more about it. So for that, thank you guys. I appreciate everybody for watching. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and have yourself a good one. Bye.